Catelyn. My lady, you ought to cover your head, Sir Roderick told her as their horses plodded north. You will take a chill. It is only water, Sir Roderick, Catelyn replied. Her hair hung wet and heavy, a loose strand stuck to her forehead, and she could imagine how ragged and wild she must look. But for once, she did not care. The southern rain was soft and warm. Catelyn liked the feel of it on her face, gentle as a mother's kisses. It took her back to her childhood, to long gray days at River Run. She remembered the godswood, drooping branches heavy with moisture, and the sound of her brother's laughter as he chased her through piles of damp leaves. She remembered making mud pies with Lisa, the weight of them, the mud slick and brown between her fingers. They had served them to Littlefinger, giggling, and he'd eaten so much mud he was sick for a week. How young they all had been. Catelyn had almost forgotten. In the north, the rain fell cold and hard, and sometimes at night it turned to ice. It was as likely to kill a crop as nurture it, and it sent grown men running for the nearest shelter. There was no rain for little girls to play in. I am soaked through, Sir Roderick complained. Even my bones are wet. The woods pressed close around them, and the steady pattering of rain on leaves was accompanied by the small sucking sounds their horses made as their hooves pulled free of the mud. We will want a fire tonight, my lady, and a hot meal would serve us both. There is an inn at the crossroads up ahead, Catelyn told him. She had slept many a night there in her youth, traveling with her father. Lord 𝘠𝘓𝘳𝘠𝘕 had been a restless man in his prime, always riding somewhere. She still remembered the innkeep, a fat woman named Masha Heddle, who chewed sour leaf night and day and seemed to have an endless supply of smiles and sweet cakes for the children. The sweet cakes had been soaked with honey, rich and heavy on the tongue, but how Catelyn had dreaded those smiles. The sour leaf had stained Masha's teeth and a dark red and made her smile a bloody horror. An inn, Sir Roderick replied wistfully. If only. But we dare not risk it. If we wish to remain unknown, I think it is best we seek out some small headfast. He broke off as they heard sounds up the road, splashing water, the clink of mail, a horse's whinny. Riders, he warned, his hand dropping to the hilt of his sword. Even on the King's Road, it was smart. They followed the sounds around a lazy bend of the road. A column of armed men noisily fording in a swollen stream. Catelyn reined up to let them pass. The banner in the hand of the foremost rider hung sodden and limp, but the guardsmen wore indigo cloaks, and on their shoulders flew the silver eagle of Seaguard. "Molesters," Sir Roderick whispered to her, as if he had not known. "My lady, best hood up your hood." Catelyn made no move. Lord Jason Malliser himself rode with them, surrounded by his knights, his son Patrick by his side, and their squires close behind. They were riding for King's Landing and the Hand's Tyranny, she knew. For the past week, the travelers had been thick as flies upon the King's Road. Knights and free riders, singers with their harps and drums, heavy wagons laden with hops or corn or casks of honey, traders and craftsmen and whores, and all of them moving south. She studied Lord Jason boldly. The last time she had seen him, he had been jesting with her uncle at her wedding feast. The Mallisters stood bannermen to the Tullys, and his gifts had been lavish. His brown hair was salted with white now, his face chiseled gaunt by time. Yet the years had not touched his pride. He rode like a man who feared nothing. Catelyn envied him that. She had come to fear so much. As the riders passed, Lord Jason nodded a curt greeting, but it was only a high lord's courtesy to strangers chance met on the road. There was no recognition in those fierce eyes, and his son did not even waste a look. "He did not know you," Sir Roderick said after, wondering. He saw a pair of mud-spattered travelers by the side of the road, wet and tired. It would never occur to him to suspect that one of them was the daughter of his liege lord. "I think we shall be safe enough at the inn, Sir Roderick." It was near dark when they reached it, at the crossroads north of the great confluence of the Trident. Masha Heddle was fatter and grayer than Catelyn remembered, still chewing her sour leaf, but she gave them only the most cursory of looks, and with nary a hint of her ghastly red smile. "2 rooms at the top of the stair. That's all there is," she said, chewing all the while. "They're under the bell tower. You won't be missing meals, though there's some thinks it's too noisy. Can't be helped. We're full up or near as makes no matter. It's those rooms or the road." It was those rooms, low, dusty garrets at the top of a cramped, narrow staircase. "Leave your boots down here," Masha told them after she'd taken their coin. "The boy will clean them. I won't have you tracking mud up and down my stairs. Mind the bell. Those who come late to meals don't eat." There were no smiles, and no mention of sweet cakes. When the supper bell rang, the sound was deafening. Catelyn had changed into dry clothes. She sat by the window, watching rain run down the pane. The glass was milky and full of bubbles, and a wet dust was falling outside. Catelyn could just make out the muddy crossing where the two great roads met. The crosswords, wow. I can read, I swear. The crossroads gave her pause. If they turned west from here, it was an easy ride down to River Run. Her father had always given her wise counsel when she needed it most, and she yearned to talk to him, to warn him of the... If Winterfell needed to brace for war, how much more so River Run, so much closer to King's Landing, with the power of Casterly Rock looming to the west like a shadow. If only her father had been stronger, she might have chanced it. But Hoster Tully had been bedridden these past 2 years, and Catelyn was loath. The eastern road was wilder and more dangerous, climbing through rocky foothills and thick forests into the mountains of the moon, past high passes and deep chams, to the Vale of Aeron and the stony fingers beyond. Above the vale, the Eyrie stood high and impregnable, its towers reaching for the sky. There she would find her sister, and perhaps some of those answers Ned sought. Surely Lisa knew more than she had dared to put in her letter. She might have the very proof that Ned needed to bring the Lannisters to ruin, and if it came to war, they would need the Addons and the Eastern lords who owed them. Yet the mountain road was perilous. Shadow cats prowled those passes. Rock slides were common, and the mountain clans were lawless brigands, descending from the heights to rob and kill, and melting away like snow whenever the knights rode out from the vale in search of them. Even Jon Arryn, as great a lord as any the Eyrie had ever known, had always traveled in strength when he crossed the mountains. Catelyn's only strength was one elderly knight, armored in loyalty. No, she thought, River Run and the Eyrie would have to wait. Her path ran north to Winterfell, where her sons and her duty were waiting for her. As soon as they were safely past the neck, she could declare herself to one of Ned's bannermen and send riders racing ahead with orders to mount a watch on the King's Road. The rain obscured the fields beyond the crossroads, but Catelyn saw the land clear enough in her memory. The marketplace was just across the way, and the village a mile further on, 100 white cottages surrounding a small stone sept. There would be more now. The summer had been long and peaceful. North of here, the King's Road ran along the green fork of the Trident, through fertile valleys and green woodlands, past thriving towns and stout holdfasts and castles of the river lords. Catelyn knew them all, the black woods and the brackens, even enemies, whose quarrels her father was obliged to settle. Lady Whent, last of her line, who dwelt with her ghosts in the cavernous vaults of Harrenhal, 𝘕𝘠𝘠𝘸𝘤𝘪𝘴, Lord Frey, who had outlived 7 wives and filled his twin castles with children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and bastards and grandbastards as well. All of them were bannermen to the Tullys, their swords sworn to the service of Riverrun. Catelyn wondered if that would be enough, if it came to war. Her father was the staunchest man who had ever lived, and she had no doubt that he would call his banners. But would the banners come? The Derrys and Raggers and Moutons had sworn oaths to Riverrun as well, yet they had fought with Rhaegar Targaryen on the Trident, while Lord Frey had arrived with his levies well after the battle was over, leaving some doubt as to which army he had planned to join. Theirs, he had assured the victors solemnly in the aftermath, but ever after her father had called him the late Lord Frey. It must not come to war, Catelyn thought fervently. They must not let it. Sir Roderick came for her just as the bell ceased its clangor. "We had best make haste if we hope to eat tonight, my lady." "It might be safer if we're not knight and lady until we pass the neck," she told him. "Common travelers attract less notice. A father and daughter are taken to the road on some family business, say." "As you say, my lady." Sir Roderick agreed. It was only when she laughed that he realized what he'd done. "The courtesies are old, and they die hard, my daughter." He tried to tug on his missing whiskers and sighed with exasperation. Catelyn took his arm. "Come, father," she said. "You'll find that 𝘕𝘠𝘠𝘠𝘠𝘠 sets a good table, I think. But try not to praise her. You truly don't want her to smile." The common room was long and draughty, with a row of huge wooden kegs at one and a fireplace at the other. A serving boy ran back and forth with skewers of meat, while Masha drew beer from the kegs, chewing her sour leaf for a while. The benches were crowded, townsfolk and farmers mingling freely with the manner of travelers. The crossroads made for odd companions. Dyers with black and purple hands shared a bench with rivermen reeking of fish. An ironsmith, thick with mustache squeezed in between a wizened old septon, hard-bitten sellswords and soft plump merchants swamped news like boon companions. The company included more swords than Catelyn would have liked. 3 by the fire wore the red stallion badge of the Brackens, and there was a large party in blue steel ringmail and capes of silvery gray. On their shoulder was another familiar sigil, the twin towers of House Frey. She studied their faces, but they were all too young to have known her. The senior among them would have been no older than Bronn when she went north. Sir Roderick found them an empty place on the bench near the kitchen, Across the table, a handsome youth was fingering a wood harp. "7 blessings to you, good folk," he said as they sat. An empty wine cup stood on the table before him. "And to you, singer," Catelyn returned. Sir Roderick called for bread and meat and beer in a tone that meant now. The singer, a youth of some 18 years, eyed them boldly and asked where they were going, and from whence they had come. The singer, a youth of some 18 years, eyed them boldly and asked where they were going, and from whence they had come, and what news they had, letting the questions fly as quick as arrows, and never pausing for an answer. "We left King's Landing a fortnight ago," Catelyn replied, answering the safest of his questions. "That's where I'm bound," the youth said. As she had suspected, he was more interested in telling his own story than hearing theirs. Singers loved nothing half so well as the sound of their own voices. "The 𝘕𝘁𝘳𝘕 means rich lords with fat purses. The last time I came away with more silver than I could carry, or would have, if I hadn't lost it all betting on the Kingslayer to win the day. The gods frown on the gambler," Sir Roderick said sternly. He was of the north and shared the stark views on tournaments. "They frowned on me for certain," the singer said. "Your cruel gods and the Knight of